Capitol Report is a production of Senate Media Services.
Keeping your hands off your cell phone while driving and staying in the right lane except to pass are just two of the new transportation laws taking effect this week. Key lawmakers talk about the new laws and what's next for the state's roads, bridges, and transit systems. Stay tuned for this week's Capitol Report. Welcome to this week's program. I'm Shannon Loehrke. If you drive a vehicle in Minnesota, you need to be aware of new laws that will affect how you drive and what you should do when you are on the road. Joining me in the studio is the Vice Chair of the Senate Transportation Committee, Senator John Jasinski. Thanks for coming today.
You bet, Shannon. Glad to be here.
So starting this week, drivers will be required to use hands-free technology when they are behind the wheel. If you will, give us a 30-second public service announcement to inform drivers of this new law.
While you're driving your car, pay attention to the road. That's what you need to be doing. All the distractions, I think, are frustrating. We've looked at from the State Patrol and what the accident ratio are and what the common denominator is. We believe a lot of it is distraction, cell phone, or whatever it may be. I mean, what I can say to drivers is just focus on the driving the road, and that's what you should be doing and not anything else. I know that's tough to do in these days, but that's really what we need to do. I was the tough one that, was probably not very good at this before, but after listening to testimony, the stories, the State Patrol, the statistics, I really think we need to focus on driving and get the phones out of our hands while we're doing so.
And in the meantime, everybody that I know has been trying to figure out the Bluetooth technology in their car, and I have done it myself. It's much easier, actually, to not be picking up my phone, to just drive, and then I have one touch, and I'm talking to whoever I want to.
Yeah, and most people are kind of practicing. I know during the month of July, a lot of people are practicing before the August date comes up, and they're practicing how to get everything. And spend some time in your driveway and make sure you understand what you can do, what you can't do, how to do it. Saying, "Hey Siri, text this." And there's so many easy things you can do to make it hands-free. That's what I would promote people to do. And you're right. Today's technology with the cars are phenomenal. The sound, the echo has gone away, and there's just so many good things to do. So I think really is trying to focus on driving and not having something in your hand, I think will really help our traffic fatalities and accidents and just the minor fender benders.
Another new law that is going to become effective, you were chief author of the bill, now law that will require slower drivers to use the right lane. So what constitutes a slower driver, and how will this be enforced?
Well, the law is written as if you have somebody behind you and you have room to move over, you should move over. It states nothing about the speed or anything like that. It just says if you're in the left lane and someone is behind you, you should pull into the right lane to drive. So I don't think people out there, the drivers, should be patrolling traffic themselves. They should just, get over to the right lane, use the left lane for passing, and then when the lane has a space available, you get over to the right if someone is behind you. There are some exceptions if you're a left turn lane or turning left or in a left off ramp or something like that, or emergency vehicle. But what I suggest, and I had Senator Dan Hall, was against the bill when the first time it came through, and he went down to Iowa one day and he says, "I'm just going to try and do that the way what you said." He says, "It makes it so much more, it's stress relief, or it's not stressful. You can just do your thing. If you have somebody behind you, pull over." It also makes people look in the rearview mirror more often, watching for emergency vehicles, things like that. The State Patrol will tell you it's safer to drive in the right lane, especially at night, because a lot of times people get on the off-ramp on the wrong direction, and those accidents happen in the left lane. So there's lots of reasons to get to the right. People are more used to the slower traffic to the right. When people pass in the right lane, that's not safe because it's kind of against the grain of traffic. So I think it's a common sense way to make traffic move more smoothly, and not so much in the 7-county area. That's a little bit more difficult. It's more for outstate Minnesota. It's obviously a rule or a law across the entire state, including the 7-county. But really, where I think the practical versions that will really take help with traffic is in the greater Minnesota areas. From Minneapolis up to St. Cloud, or from Forest Lake to Duluth, or from Minneapolis down to Albert Lee, things like that. Those are those areas where I think this happens. You've all been out there, and there's two people going side by side, and if one person would just move over, the traffic could come through. So I think it'll be a good law.
Yeah, it'll help traffic flow better. You were also chief author of legislation that will reimburse deputy registrars for the money that they lost during the Minnesota licensing and registration system,
Yes.
the problems that we had with that, and we'll get to what's next in just a moment. What are you hearing from those businesses knowing that they're going to get some reimbursement now?
Overall, they're happy. They're taking the checks. The checks are actually going out during the month of July. My deputy register got hers on July 1st or July 2nd, I think it was, so they're getting those. There were a couple issues. One is it an income, so should it be taxable? We're trying to work through that. It's kind of a gray area, so they kind of relied on the Fed to see what they say, and they haven't really got a definite opinion. So we'll be working on that this session to clarify if that's a taxable event or not. I don't believe it is. I believe this is a compensation for things that were done wrong, not an income item. So I want to make sure that we work on that so it's not a tax-based thing, so you have to pay tax on that. There was some language on when they took it, when they signed off, there was some language they wanted to have changed, and we've done that. And then finally, the calculation of the number of transactions, there was some discussion on that, how those calculations were done, if they were correct or not. So we're working through all those, and we'll continue, but from what I understand, 95% of the deputy registers are in favor of it, are taking the checks. We do have probably a couple that are not going to take them, think they've been harmed more than the dollar amounts that we offered, so they'll work through the other system, through the court system. But to my knowledge, 95% are very happy with the checks and they're cashing them.
So because of the troubled rollout of MNLARS, a decision was made, big change, that Minnesota will move to a new title and registration system called VITRIS. The new system will be in place by fall of 2021 when MNLARS will be decommissioned then at that point. Are we being naive to think that this new system will be kind of a cure-all and fix all the problems that we suffered under MNLARS?
I think they are going to be corrected. We've put a lot of manpower out there to get the system transformed. I think we approved 110 people to get the conversion done to make sure that's done. This software is shared by 11 other states, so anything in the future, the risk of that is diversified over 12 states. So if one state has something, they'll correct it in our state. So it just really takes that money and it spreads out our risk on that. So I think it'll continue. We have a lot of people to correct with that. The speeds are already speeding up in July. The speeds, to get your deputy or to get your license, or you get your license plate or your driver's license, are increasing now. They're getting much more efficient. So with those added people and the new software, I really do believe we'll see faster times. And at some point, even look at possibly printing driver's licenses in those deputy registers, even speed up the process further. Now, that's not law now, but with this system, that's something we'll be able to continue in the future and try and get to that point at some point.
So more innovations, more timeliness people can look forward to. The conditions of Minnesota roads are always a hot topic. Congestion, potholes, road construction, everybody, and I'm sure you hear it a lot.
Oh, yeah.
People have a lot to say about the roads and their commute times.
Absolutely.
Are policymakers doing enough to improve our roads? Are you satisfied with what is being done right now?
I think we're working towards it. It's always going to be a continual process. We in 2017 we put the tax on the auto part sales tax, leased vehicle and rental cars. That's generating about $450 million every 2 years, or 460, yeah, so $230 million per year, and that's only 52% we're capturing. So we could capture more. Roads and bridges obviously have been deteriorating, so we want to get as much money in as we can to get those roads in good shape so people can drive without potholes and those things. Bonding, we've been doing a lot of bonding in the past years on projects. Highway 14 got done, Highway 52, there's Highway 10, there's some other ones that got done as part of those projects. So we're continuing to invest in our infrastructure to make roads and bridges better in the state of Minnesota.
You've been traveling a bit, looking at transit systems elsewhere. Do you think the Twin Cities needs to have more investment in transit?
I'm in favor of buses. The rail, to me, I am a little bit concerned about. Our density in Minnesota is not that high. I just got back from Japan in June, and they have 11 million people in the size of Minneapolis, St. Paul. Our whole state is 5.5 million. So I think it's we do have some of it, and obviously to increase that and keep that going and maintain is important. But to stretch that out, given our density, I'm not so much in favor of. Not only that, with buses, what we can do with buses now, autonomous cars are coming. So I just think money can be better spent on other avenues to, again, in the autonomous vehicle and things like that. So,
Senator Jasinski, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Each Each year, state fairgoers are asked to take an opinion poll on pressing state issues. Questions are developed from among the numerous bills proposed by lawmakers and represent pressing issues and concerns that remain unresolved. You'll find the Minnesota Senate booth and the House of Representatives booth inside the Education Building on Cosgrove Street at the State Fairgrounds. In addition to making your views known by taking the separate polls offered by the Senate and the House, you may have the opportunity to visit with one or more lawmakers frequently on hand to listen to the concerns of fairgoers. The Education Building also houses booths of some of Minnesota's nonprofit and educational institutions, offers robotics demonstrations by middle and high school students, and displays art, writing, and craft projects demonstrating the work of some of Minnesota's most talented kids. If you happen to find yourself at the Great Minnesota Get-Together this summer, don't forget to stop by the Minnesota Senate booth in the Education Building to provide your perspective on this year's State Fair opinion poll. Senator Jim Carson has been a senior DFL member of the Senate Transportation Committee for the past several years and has focused his attention on improving transportation safety measures. He joins me now in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you, Shannon.
So, members of both parties have recognized your continued efforts to make Minnesota roads safer by encouraging drivers to stop handling their cell phones when they're driving. The hands-free driving law goes into effect this week. Are you confident that drivers will follow the new law?
Yes, I am, to the point where the people that do follow the laws. We'll always have some people that will ignore it, but we also put in a little bit tougher penalties, the $275 fine, plus I'm advised that there are ways that you can lose your license by getting so many tickets within a 12-month period. So I think that there will be an increase in compliance, just like we did with seatbelt laws.
And because of increased penalties, people will just simply follow the law to save themselves some money and frustration?
I think so. In my own case, I never liked to talk on the phone when I was driving, and I never liked to text now, but I did back when it was still legal. I never spent a lot of time texting, but I would text, for instance, my legislative assistant when I was pulling into the parking ramp here, because when you get into the parking ramp, your phone is out of connection. So I would tell him when I'm arriving. So I thought about that today when I was coming up here, and we had an incident on 35E, and I was going to be late. And I thought, boy, I wonder if there's a way to get a hold of Shannon to tell her that I'm stopped in traffic. So yes, I think people will follow it, and I think that once they do, once they realize that this is making people safer, and also they'll look back at maybe some close calls that they've had, and they'll feel comfortable doing it, and they'll use that as their excuse for not responding to people, like I do right now.
There you go. So it takes effect this week. Give me a 30-second public service announcement.
When you pick up your phone, realize you're not paying attention to the road. But the biggest thing is you're dedicating one hand to that cell phone, and you often will not be signaling, you will not be shifting, and if you smoke, you already know that you have one hand already dedicated to that. So be aware that what you're doing is you're taking away a certain level of being able to respond to the traffic situation around you. So please put down the phone. Use an earbud, use your Bluetooth, use your car's internal system to use your phone, and you'll be happier that you've done so.
And safer. A few years ago, the legislature directed the Department of Transportation to study speed limits and whether rural roads should be raised from 55 to 60. In the end, they concluded that most people were ignoring 55 and 60 was safe. However, we also hear that speed kills. So would you weigh in on just our speed limits? Are they appropriate across the state?
I think there's a lot of examples where 55 is just too slow. We have different speed limits based on the access. If it's a limited access highway, I don't think that 55 is really adequate, and that's where people start to speed. And I think that the study is important to maybe differentiate between where 55 is the safe speed or less, and 55 probably is not applicable. For instance, when you go from into the metro area here, you're still on a limited access highway. So is 55 appropriate there? Well, actually, no one goes 55 there. So I think that there's good reason to look at some of these speed limits. I like to drive at least the speed limit. And so, you know, I look at the speed limit, and usually if you're using like a navigator app, it tells you what the speed limit is right on the screen. And I think all of those things are important because speed does kill. There's no doubt about that. And when you're in a rural area where the limited access exists, I think you can go to a higher speed limit. But if it's somewhere where, and I've seen some 55-mile-an-hour areas where 55 is the maximum you should be driving.
Right.
So I think the study is absolutely appropriate to figure out the best speed limit for any highway.
So let's turn to transit briefly. This year, the legislature passed a law that will allow light rail transit operators to be prosecuted for violating traffic laws. Previously, they were exempt, and surprisingly, there have been incidences between light rail trains and pedestrians. Does the state have sufficient training for the LRT operators? Does more need to be done to ensure the safety of pedestrians and other people who are crossing those railways?
I think more training is probably appropriate. However, in what I was going to do last year, and we're still looking into it, is mandating controls on these trains. Because, for instance, if you bought a new Toyota or a new Outback, they'll stop if a pedestrian walks out in front of them. And I think that should be on these light rail trains, where they cannot enter an intersection if the light is red. They will take over if there is some kind of an object or person or car that's in the way. I think that we have to do.
So that's an increased technology that would be added to the trains.
And like I say, it's already in place in many automobiles. And, you know, we're putting that into place in locomotives, you know, trains as well. So I think the training is going to happen, but I think we also need to, because these things are operated on the streets, I think there needs to be far more focus than we've had in the past. And I absolutely support that bill that made driving on the street, whether it's in a car or whether it's in a light rail, you have to be susceptible to the same traffic laws.
Finally, Minnesota has an overall well-developed transportation system. Our MSP airport is an international hub. Freight moves on the Mississippi and on rails. We have more highways per capita than many other states. And we have growing demands in the metropolitan area for less congestion. Things are getting congested here. So in your view, wrapping up, you know, your transportation assessment as of this moment, what are the challenges facing lawmakers for the next decade? Because 2020 is just around the corner.
Well, the next decade, of course, it's being able to fund this infrastructure and make sure that the infrastructure is being built for the future, because the lead time on building something like that is years, and the funding is always short. I have a neighbor that does nothing but complain about having to drive downtown Minneapolis right now because there's so much construction going on. And part of that is because we let it go for so long. We talked about the bus stop on Lake Street, plus the unwinding down at the crossing of 94 and 35W. Those things were held off, and now it's a monstrous project. But we also need to make sure that we look at what's going to be required in the next decade, because we've talked about driverless cars or self-driving cars or automated cars. Mm-hmm. Those are cars that are not on the road today, and that's going to make congestion worse. We always have to remember that the automated or self-drive cars are going to follow the law. They're not going to speed. They're not going to cut you off at the end at any close distances. Mm-hmm. And what that's going to generate is more congestion. So if you have, for instance, a disability that will allow you to get a license, then you want to make sure that you have enough roadway that we can accommodate these cars.
So funding and then just a vision of a different future.
Yes.
Senator Carlson, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Shannon.
"27 monuments and memorials honoring those who've made important contributions to the state can be found on the grounds of the Minnesota Capitol. Here's a look at one of the more recent additions, the Minnesota Memorial to the Special Forces in Laos. On a sultry June morning in 2016, marking the more than 4 decades that have passed since the first Hmong refugees arrived in the United States, a memorial to commemorate the U.S. and Alliance Special Forces in Laos was installed on the Minnesota State Capitol grounds. The monument depicts the contributions, sacrifices, and experiences of the Hmong, Lao, and American soldiers, as well as the nurses, advisors, and volunteers who served and fought for freedom in Southeast Asia from 1961 to 1975. The memorial itself is a 10-foot tall bronze depiction of a bamboo sprout.
We came up with the concept of using a bamboo sprout to symbolize the vigorous renewal that the Hmong culture has experienced here in Minnesota, because bamboo was a plant that they used to survive on in the jungles when food sources had all disappeared, and it was their shelter and many other functions for them. So it's an important plant to them, and it also has those qualities of being a vigorous resprouter. If somebody hacks it down, it can come back to life. And that's essentially what happened to them in Laos, is they were almost exterminated, or they were being tried to exterminate them. So they have come back strong and vigorous, full of courage, and that's what we wanted to portray.
The inspiration behind the bas-relief depictions on the statue was the story cloths created by the Hmong women in Thai refugee camps. Known for their fine embroidery skills, Hmong women created tapestries portraying events and stories from Hmong history and culture to earn money. Some of these tapestries depict, in great detail, the refugees' harrowing war experiences.
My first memory in life was the gush wind hitting my face with blowing sand, to my face. And it's not a natural wind, but it's the sand that, it's a wind that gather all the sand blowing at you, caused by the helicopter or caused by plane taking off from the clandestine airfield of Longchang. Longchang is the name of that airfield, or landing, or when they're taking people back in the body bags, or when they lift off. So that was my first memory of being at the airfield and sandy wind just blowing in my face.
In the early 1960s, fearing the spread of communism, the CIA began a secret war in the officially neutral Kingdom of Laos, recruiting approximately 46,000 Hmong and Lao men and boys who became known as the SGU, or Special Guerrilla Unit, to help fight the North Vietnamese. By the end of the war, as many as 35,000 Hmong soldiers were killed or missing in action, and more than 120,000 displaced Hmong people began to flee. Senator Loehrke describes his own family's escape.
It's always that they will greet each other loudly and so happy and cuddle each other. But that time, the conversation become whisper. They're all happy, but they're all happy because they're together, but all the conversation are whisper, like that. And I said, that's kind of strange, As a kid, 8 years old, 10 years old, that's kind of strange. Finally, this time, all the adults are whispering to each other. And then I saw my dad handing money to all my relatives. I didn't know what that meant, but meaning that we're not going to see each other. So here, trying to make your way across. My father probably the highest earner, being that he's a military man, so he, divide his money to his relative and trying to make your way across, you know.
The escapes from almost certain genocide from Laos to Thailand were fraught with danger, including the life-threatening crossing of the Mekong River, illustrated in many Hmong storycloths.
So immediately after the war, the communists won, and they were capturing everybody and they could, and they would kill men, kill babies, and capture Americans who were still left there also, and take people into these prison of war camps, and they called them re-education centers. And there they would have to grow vegetables to, you know, facilitate the communists. And some of the tortures involved being tied to poles, being buried up to your neck in sand, being carried into these underground pits where there would be bamboo roof over your head, but you'd be in isolation under the ground.
These are just some of the many stories represented on the 16 panels of the memorial. The 4 tiers on the memorial tell a multitude of stories, each from a different point of view.
When I start looking at the bottom, I see the politics, but then as time goes by, I see the disaster and then the sorrow. Then a couple layers up, you know, I see the hope, the prosperity, the welcomeness of Minnesotan. And I do get a little giggling, you know, it's a little humorous as I go up, as they put a few character, you know, quirky looking Minnesotan with thick coat, you know, and some with mitten, and some with Lutheran pastor look, welcoming, you know, the Hmong as they land at the Minnesota, you know, Minneapolis International Airport. You know, so, and then there's even a snowman next to a church, and that's, you know, that is kind of truly how, I mean, it's a small picture, and we can't stereotype that is Minnesota, but in itself, it does show Minnesota. It shows kind of some way the land of the Green Giant, or the Pillsbury Doughboy, or the Ham Spear. You know, when I see the snowman next to the church, you know, so I get that, you know, humorous perspective from that, just that small image, yeah.
The images are powerful and transcend language barriers. For those whose lives were lost and those whose lives were affected by the United States' secret war in Laos, their children, their grandchildren, and all of us have a special place on the St. Paul Capitol grounds in which to learn, reflect, and remember. Join us again next week as we delve into more topics affecting Minnesotans. I'm Shannon Loehrke, and on behalf of all of us at Senate Media Services, thanks for watching.